Yes, sir.
Wait for me, Pat. I want to get a picture.
What if I told you one of the most terrifying alien movies of all time almost looked completely different? Long before John Carpenter's slimy body horror classic, there was the 1951 original, The Thing from Another World, a movie born in the shadow of the Cold War, stitched together by feuding filmmakers and starring a monster that was never supposed to look the way you remember it. Behind the frozen landscapes and burning title letters, there were hidden battles, dangerous stunts, and secrets so wild they could have killed the cast. Some call it just another monster flick, but the truth is, it was a Cold War nightmare disguised as science fiction. And the stories behind the camera are just as chilling as what burst out of the ice. These are 16 hidden facts about The Thing from Another World. 16. The blizzard made of breakfast cereal. Special effects in the early 50s didn't have the luxury of computers. To pull off the look of ice and debris when the alien craft is uncovered by explosives, the crew turned to low-tech, practical genius. They loaded air jets with pounds of cornflakes and flour, under the harsh studio lights, and when filmed in black and white, the breakfast cereal and baking ingredients perfectly mimicked the look of ice shards and snow exploding across the screen. The trick worked so well that audiences never suspected it was breakfast raining down on the actors. Combined with careful matte paintings to create the illusion of a vast, frozen wasteland, the sequence felt massive and authentic. Sometimes, Hollywood history is just smoke, mirrors, and cereal. Freezing the set for real authenticity. To sell the film's oppressive Arctic atmosphere, the crew didn't just rely on fake snow and actors pretending to be cold. They went a step further, actually refrigerating the sound stages at the RKO Ranch. They dropped the ambient temperature to near freezing levels for a very specific and practical reason, so the actor's breath would visibly fog up on camera, just as it would in a real polar environment. The cast had to bundle up in real, heavy parkas between takes, and scenes were shot in a visibly cold and uncomfortable environment. It was miserable for the actors, but it gave the movie a powerful sense of authenticity that special effects alone couldn't capture. The chill you see on screen wasn't fake. The Arctic was brought to life on a Hollywood soundstage. Next 14. A monster made of blood-drinking plants. Most 1950s movie aliens were little green men or bug-eyed invaders from Mars. But the creative team behind The Thing from Another World went in a different, far stranger direction. The alien in this film wasn't an animal at all. It was conceived as an advanced, intelligent, plant-based life form. According to the script and the scientists' dialogue, it was a super carrot, a walking, blood-drinking vegetable that fed on blood plasma like a vampire, but grew and reproduced through seeds, with cells that mimicked chlorophyll. This was a radically bizarre and original choice for the time, blurring the line between a science experiment gone wrong and a creature from a nightmare. It also gave the film a strange allegorical edge about science running wild and nature itself turning hostile. 13. The uncredited stars and the military. While most films of the era opened by proudly announcing the names of their cast and crew in a long credit sequence. But The Thing from Another World did something bold and unusual. The opening title simply burned its way through the screen with those iconic, fiery letters. And then the movie launched straight into the story. There were no names, no billing, no starring, credits. The actors, including the leads, went completely uncredited until the very end of the film. This was a deliberate stylistic choice to add to the atmosphere of mystery and unease. It made the film feel less like a glamorous Hollywood production and more like a classified military file or a stark news report. a feeling reinforced by the use of real-life journalists in the film. The choice made the story itself the star. Science versus the military, the film's true conflict. At its core, the movie isn't just about a group of people fighting a monster. It's a powerful allegory for the defining ideological clash of the early Cold War, the conflict between scientific curiosity and military pragmatism. This is perfectly embodied by the two central opposing figures. Dr. Carrington, the head scientist, is arrogant and obsessive. He believes the alien, no matter how dangerous, should be studied and communicated with, arguing that the pursuit of knowledge is worth any human sacrifice. On the other side, the Air Force captain, Pat Hendry, sees the creature only as a threat that must be destroyed at all costs to protect his people. This tense tug-of-war between intellectual curiosity and military necessity reflected the real world, fears of the atomic age, the dangers of unchecked science versus the brutal need for defense. The film wasn't just sci-fi, it was a political warning dressed as entertainment. 11. The editing trick that added a missing victim. Not everything terrifying on screen was in the original script. During the editing process, the filmmakers felt that the alien's threat needed to be more pronounced early on. Audiences needed to see just how dangerous it was, so the editor, Christian Nyby, cleverly spliced in an extra unscripted moment of horror. He took scraps of unused footage and reaction shots to create a short sequence that shows a crew member's sudden disappearance, strongly hinting that the alien had gotten to him. It was a subtle but brilliant trick, built almost entirely from footage that was meant to be thrown away. But it completely changed the tone of the film's first half, establishing the alien as an unstoppable and deadly force, even when it wasn't on screen. Next 10. A loose, almost unrecognizable adaptation. The movie is technically based on the legendary 1938 sci-fi novella, Who Goes There? By John W. Campbell. But if you've read that story, you know the film barely resembles it. Campbell's book was a masterpiece of paranoia and psychological horror centered on a terrifying alien creature that could perfectly imitate any living thing it touched, forcing the isolated crew to turn on each other in a desperate attempt to figure out who was still human. The 1951 film stripped most of that psychological horror away, focusing instead on a more straightforward single monster threat and adding the science versus the military theme. It was John Carpenter's 1982 remake, The Thing, that would faithfully adapt the shape-shifting paranoia of the original book. The 1951 version wasn't a faithful adaptation, but its focus on action and Cold War themes gave audiences a thrilling creature feature that still packed a punch. 9. The monster's last-minute, Frankenstein-inspired makeover. The alien suit was originally designed by makeup artist Lee Greenway, who spent months creating something truly unique and otherworldly. Early sketches and concepts leaned toward a more alien look, less human, more insect-like, with a sleek, almost biomechanical appearance that would have been closer to the novella's vision of a truly alien being. But when the producers and studio executives saw the initial results, they panicked. They thought audiences in 1951 wouldn't accept something so strange and abstract. So, at the very last minute, they demanded major changes. Greenway was ordered to scrap his original design and simplify the creature, giving it a more recognizably human-like head with a heavy brow and squared-off Frankenstein features. This compromise frustrated the creative team, but it stuck. The alien ended up looking more like a classic Universal movie monster than an unearthly terror, a decision made out of fear that the audience wasn't ready for something truly alien. The dangerous, kerosene-fueled fire stunt. One of the most shocking and memorable moments in the movie comes when the alien monster bursts into the crew's quarters and is immediately set on fire. For a film made in 1951, this wasn't just a daring stunt, It was one of the most dangerous and ambitious fire stunts ever attempted. The entire scene was shot MOS, meaning without sound recording, so the crew could focus entirely on the complex and dangerous choreography of the stunt. Multiple stuntmen were hidden just off camera, holding fire extinguishers. The stuntman playing the alien was engulfed in real, ignited kerosene. The flames burned so hot and so intensely that actors who were standing far off camera reported feeling the heat blister their skin. The sequence was terrifyingly real, a moment of genuine, uncontrolled danger that almost ended in disaster, but resulted in one of the most unforgettable and visceral scenes in 50s sci-fi history. Next 7. Cracking the ice with real, window-shattering explosives. When the crew uncovers the flying saucer buried in the Arctic ice, the filmmakers wanted the reveal to feel massive and violent. To get the shot, they didn't rely on simple effects. They used actual powerful explosive charges buried under the set. When detonated, these charges blasted huge chunks of fake ice and snow sky high. The force of the real explosions was so strong that it rattled the studio walls and, according to crew members, even cracked several real windows in the nearby studio buildings. For a movie made on a relatively modest budget, it was an incredibly risky and dangerous stunt that pushed the limits of on-set safety. But it paid off, creating one of the most iconic images in 50s sci-fi. The Arctic wasn't fake that day. They blew it up for real. Next 6. The actor buried and suffocating in the monster suit. Before he became the legendary Marshal Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke, the towering actor James Arness had one of the strangest and most brutal early roles in Hollywood, playing the alien in The Thing from Another World. At over 6'7", he had the immense size the producers wanted, towering menacingly over the rest of the cast. But the role was a physical nightmare. The full-body makeup and prosthetics took hours to apply each day, with layers of latex, padding, and a heavy headpiece that severely restricted his breathing. Arness hated the suit, complaining constantly that he felt like he was suffocating inside it. To make matters worse, some scenes required him to perform dangerous stunts, like crashing through doors and taking the full force of the fire blasts, all while barely being able to see through the tiny eye slits in the mask. Years later, Arness admitted he was deeply embarrassed by the role. He even skipped the film's premiere, worried that his friends and the public would laugh at him for playing a lumbering vegetable monster. Little did he know that, buried under all that uncomfortable makeup, he was creating a sci-fi icon. Next 5. The shapeshifter that never was, an unmade masterpiece. The most terrifying idea in the original novella, Who Goes There?, was that the alien was a shapeshifter, a creature that could perfectly absorb and imitate anyone it touched. Imagine the intense, claustrophobic paranoia. Your best friend, your commanding officer, the person sleeping in the bunk next to you might not be human anymore. That psychological horror was supposed to be the heart of the movie. But when production began, the studio slammed into a cold, hard wall called the budget. Pulling off convincing, shape-changing effects in 1951 would have required incredibly expensive and time-consuming makeup, complex camera tricks, and multiple elaborate creature suits. It was simply too ambitious for the film's budget. Instead, the filmmakers were forced to scrap the entire shape-shifting concept, radically simplifying the alien into a single, hulking, Frankenstein-like figure. It was far easier and cheaper to shoot, but it was a huge and disappointing departure from the source material's core concept. It would take John Carpenter, 31 years later, to finally bring the terrifying shapeshifter to life. Next 4. The film's strange and lasting legacy. When it hit theaters in 1951, The Thing from Another World didn't just scare audiences. It lit the fuse for a whole decade of creature features. The iconic burning title sequence, the isolated Arctic setting, the theme of a scientific team accidentally unleashing an alien menace. All of these became blueprints for countless sci-fi and horror films that followed. Its influence stretched far beyond the 50s. Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, with its message of a united humanity exploring the unknown, was deeply influenced by the film's serious tone. John Carpenter openly paid tribute with his legendary 1982 remake, and countless directors have borrowed its atmosphere of paranoia and its theme of man versus the great unknown. What started as a modest, black-and-white thriller ended up shaping an entire genre for generations to come. The monster may have been defeated, but its long shadow still looms over science fiction today. Next, 3. The real director was a Hollywood legend in disguise. On paper, The Thing from Another World was directed by Nyby, a respected film editor who was supposedly getting his big break as a director. His name is right there in the credits, etched into history. But if you talk to the actors and crew who were actually on the set, they will tell you a very different and much more controversial story. Many swore then, and still swear today, that the real puppet master, the true director of the film, was the legendary filmmaker Howard Hawks. Hawks was officially only the producer, but he was a constant, domineering presence on set. He was seen blocking shots, rewriting dialogue on the fly, and coaching the actors on their performances. To many, it looked less like a producer giving guidance, and more like Hawks was directing the entire film himself, using Nyby as a front. Why would he do this? Some film historians believe Hawks, a prestigious director of westerns and comedies, didn't want his name officially tied to what he considered a B-list monster movie. Others say he was simply testing his protege Nyby. Either way, the question of who really directed this classic film remains one of Hollywood's most debated and fascinating mysteries. The final warning: watch the skies. The film's final line is one of the most famous and chilling in science fiction history. After the creature has been destroyed, the journalist Scotty looks directly into the camera and delivers a stark warning to the audience. Tell the world. Tell this to everybody, wherever they are. Watch the skies, everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies. In the context of 1951, this was not just a spooky sign-off. It was a direct and powerful metaphor for the pervasive, all-encompassing fear of the Cold War. The Thing from Another World wasn't just an alien. It was the looming threat of the atomic bomb, the fear of an attack from an enemy that could come from anywhere, at any time. The film's final message wasn't about monsters from space. It was a deeply paranoid and poignant warning about the real-world dangers of a world on the brink of self-destruction. Next one. The A-list star who was cast as the monster. This final fact is a piece of Hollywood legend that has been debated for years, but it's too good not to share. As we know, James Arness played the creature. However, according to some early production rumors and unconfirmed stories from the time, the original choice for the monster was none other than one of the biggest and most iconic actors in Hollywood history, John Wayne. The story goes that Howard Hawks, who had worked with Wayne on numerous classic westerns, initially offered him the role, thinking it would be a shocking and unforgettable piece of casting to have America's biggest hero play the monstrous alien. Wayne, unsurprisingly, is said to have turned down the role immediately, reportedly telling Hawks, "I'm not getting in a damn rubber suit." While it's likely just a piece of Hollywood folklore, just imagine for a second the iconic, lumbering silhouette of the Thing from Another World, but with the unmistakable swagger of John Wayne underneath. It's a bizarre and hilarious what if that adds one final, strange layer to the legend of this sci-fi masterpiece. Next, The Thing from Another World may look like a simple 1950s monster flick on the surface, but behind the scenes, it was anything but simple. A hidden director, dangerous fire stunts, bizarre creative choices, and a legacy that outgrew its own monster suit. This film managed to freeze its place in history. What makes it unforgettable isn't just the thrill of an alien crashing through doors, but the powerful way it captured the pervasive Cold War fear that the enemy could come from anywhere, at any time, even from the stars above. That paranoia, that palpable sense of dread, still echoes in modern horror and sci-fi today. 70 years later, the chilling final warning of the film feels just as relevant. So, which of these strange facts shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments.